presentation is called What It Means to Really Care. So after reading The Challenge to Care in Schools by Nel Noddings, the question that really kind of stirred in me was, do our teachers truly care? Like when you think back to your high school experience, can you really say that your teachers cared about you as a person? Did they care about your growth academically, about whether or not you got into college, how you performed in college? Did they truly care about your future? And you might think initially, you might think for some of them, yeah, they did, they definitely did. But after reading this book, as future teachers, there's so much more that we can do to make sure that our students are cared for, and in turn, when they know that they're cared for, and there's that trust there, then they'll want to work harder for you, and you'll see a growth, in the student, not only academically but as a person. So, The Challenge to Care in Schools by Nel Noddings. It was originally published in 1992. But the publication of the new edition came in 2005. So in the new publication, basically the only difference was that Noddings wrote a new introduction that argues traditional education concepts versus progressive education concepts. And she wonders if there's always just going to be this back and forth argument between the two. She describes it like a pendulum, just swinging back and forth between the two, or if there's can be middle ground found somewhere. There's a happy medium between the two. She was born on January 19th, 1929. She spent more than 15 years as a high school math instructor and administrator before earning her PhD. She began working at Stanford University in 1977, and there she received the Lee L. Jacks Professor of Education Emerita at Stanford. And she described her early education years as having a major influence on her stance on education. She claims that when she was in high school, she knew that her teachers cared deeply for her. Her and her husband actually went to high school together. They knew that their teachers cared deeply for her. They weren't necessarily the best teachers, but they made an effort to know their students and work with them and encourage them. And to me, I was able to kind of connect with that because she's much older. She's like in her mid-80s now. But my grandparents, they went to high school together, grew up going to school together. My grandparents have been dating since like the 3rd grade. So they've literally been together like their whole life. And they used to talk about when they went to school, everything was just smaller back then. It was just totally different than it is now. There's no technology and electronics. And it was a small town, so they went to church with all their teachers. They knew that teachers knew their families, and so they knew that the teachers cared. They knew that, that they had that relationship, and they knew that they cared. So that made them, that's all they knew. They knew school and they knew sports. And so that's what they did. That's what they had to be good at. And anyways, it was just a different world. What is her theory? So she was very, very progressive in her educational ideas. She's an advocate for radical change in the way that education is set up. She thinks that schools today should focus more on being centers of care rather than just being centers for academic achievement, for intellectual advancement. She actually thinks that it should be about half and half between academics and centers for care. She says that the attitude toward education is do nothing in education that might result in lower test scores. So do what you like, but only if you can raise the test scores or at least maintain them. Because she says that's what public schools just drill into their teachers and their faculty is test scores, test scores, test scores, and she thinks that that's ridiculous. The purpose of education should be a dedication to growth as a person, not just academic growth. Nodding says that classrooms should be places in which students can legitimately act on a rich variety of purposes, in which curiosity are alive, in which students and teachers live together and grow. She believes that even if a dedication to full human growth impedes intellectual achievement, she's willing to take that risk because it results in people living non-violently together and more serenely and peacefully with themselves, and it would just result in a better society. So she believes that the school's first priority should not necessarily be intellectual development. It should be more about being the center for care. Control, control, control. So she says that this is what schools, drill into their teacher. This is how they want to control. They want to control everything that goes on. They want to control the curriculum. They want to control the faculty. They want to control the students. In public education today, everything's driven by a standard. Teachers and students develop a treatment-to-subject relationship. So it's not driven by care. The goal of education, like I said, is to control teachers, students, and content. And these educational theorists have basically ignored that students may have interests outside the basic curriculum that they're learning in schools, and that might be what they want to pursue their careers in. So essentially, it was up to the teachers to motivate the students to do what they were required to do by law. They, had motivated students to do stuff that they didn't want to do. And also, administrators expect there to be some method that teachers use to meet 200 new students every year and to connect with them on a personal level. People can't be reduced to methods. Noddings says this is a form of automation, and that can't be used in interpersonal relationships. She defined liberal education as a design for general education, usually includes language, lit, fine arts, math, science, and history, all of your basic subjects. She really, really hates liberal education. And she argues that no student is the same, that they're expected to take the same courses and pass all those courses at the same level, which makes a lot of sense. I tend to agree with that. And she says it ensures unequal outcomes, and that this, it kind of demotes originality and like kids embracing their true identities. School cannot serve as just a center for education. Students need to receive care and feel comfortable at school. So, it's kind of like they expect students to just go home every day, every student to just go home every day, and they're going to go live in a great house, eat a full meal, be cared for, be able to bathe. It's almost like there's an assumption being made that all students' lives are like that, and that schools can just simply serve as like a center for learning and center for academic achievement. And a lot of times when kids are at school, they're getting more care there than they're not getting cared for at home. That might be, the only meal that they get all day is the meal that they get at school. So here's an example of just some of the standards that we have to live up to as teachers. This is Mississippi Standards for English, Language Arts, and Mathematics. And it just gives you some examples. It says expectations are consistent for all and not dependent on the student's zip code, which means all students across the state are held to the same high standards. That's exactly what Noddings is saying. She thinks that all students are different, they all learn differently, they shouldn't be expected to learn at the same level. And high standards will not only improve what students learn, but how they learn by teaching critical thinking, problem solving, and effective communication skills. We have shifted from what's taught to what students need to be able to do to succeed in the future. And so all this, this is Mississippi's rules, and this is obviously, she disagrees with that totally. She thinks that schools should embrace individuality, and she basically says that students should have more of a say-so in what they're learning. Here's some statistics too. Going back to schools cannot simply just serve as a center for education. This is for Oktibbeha County. 74, as of 2015, 74.3% of K through 12 public school students in Oktibbeha County participate in the National Lunch Program. To qualify for free lunch, children's family income must be under $15,171 in 2015. 68.6% of students in Oktibbeha County receive free lunch. And that tells you right there, these stats prove, these kids are going home to live in these mansions. They need to be cared for at school. And, I went to a private school growing up, so we didn't have to worry about test scores. Most of the kids that I went to school with came from the same kind of demographic. We had some issues, but most everybody could, was going home and getting fed and getting cared for. But my mom taught in the inner cities, She's taught in Jackson, she's taught in Atlanta. She's done it for many years. She knows better than anyone that a lot of those kids that come to school, that might be the only meal that they get all day long. They're gonna come back to school wearing the same clothes that they wore the day before. So, it's definitely not correct for schools to just assume that all students are going to be cared for at home, because that's not the case. So how do we care? She gives us 6 specific ways that we can create a caring atmosphere. It's caring for yourself, caring in the inner circle, as far as caring for your friends and your family, caring for strangers and distant others. It's pretty self-explanatory. Caring for animals, plants, and the earth, caring for the human-made world, and caring for ideas. These are all ways that Noddings thinks that as teachers we should, instill those values into our students. She also believes that, or is also a proponent of continuity in schools, especially in the teachers and curriculum. So what she means by that is, she believes students should be with the same teacher for at least 3 years. She says 3 to 6 years. She also says that that should be mutually agreed upon. That if the teacher and the student don't get along, the student doesn't like the teacher, he doesn't have to have that teacher, is basically what she says. But she thinks that, if students and teachers maintain a relationship for more than just one school year, they'll be able to build a trust between the two, and that'll get more out of a student. And she also says continuity is establishing curriculum by students being able to exercise some choice in what they want to study. So say, student loves science. He knows that when he gets to college, he's going to want to be a biologist, and so he's going to start preparing himself in high school. He's going to take science classes. He's going to take all the math that he needs to be better prepared for those science classes. He might take an English so he'll know how to write a lab report. That's kind of her philosophy on continuity in high schools. So how do I use this in my classroom? Number 1, strive to know your students on a personal, professional level. If you know your students' personalities and learning styles, it's much easier to connect with them and motivate with them. Like I said, you build that trust, the student's going to be more likely to work hard and try to make good grades. For example, when I was in 5th grade, I had a teacher, her name was Miss North, I'll never forget it. And her and my mom taught in the school district too, so she knew my mom. That was like one of her best friends. She knew me. She had known me since I was born, basically. She was a family friend. And